This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's pod. This is a show for the week of November 28th, 2022. And we're recording on a Monday night just because Bob Iger had a town hall meeting. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But this week we go through my final plans for my trip that's just in. I'm on the road 7 days from right now.
Wow.
So I'm stoked for that. Our takes on attractions of yesteryear. This is one of Phil's doing. And our changes coming to Park Reservations. So there's rumors going on about that. Plus DBC engagement on what to do most, what you want to see most change with the parks with Iger back, and if it's realistic or not. So a lot of people had some input on what they'd like to see changed, but within reason. I think we said it last week, because I wish that park tickets were half price, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So realistic changes that I think Iger can institute rather painlessly within the next 6 to 12 months, I would say. I think that's a good time frame. But first, here's what's going on in our Disney World. Phil, I think you're starting with the town hall. What's going on today?
Yeah. So as mentioned, Bob Iger held a town hall today, his kind of first reaching out to the larger cast member community. He really kind of only talked for about 5 minutes and then turned it over to Q&A, where people were able to ask questions either ahead of time or during it. They brought up a lot of topics that I think people want to know about, especially related to the parks and stuff like that. He didn't have a lot of details to say. I think one of the things that came out to me was that he must have really disconnected himself from Disney while he was gone, because a lot of the things he's like, yeah, I don't know that much about that. I got to learn about that, and that sort of thing. So
I mean, like,
I think
that's a politician's way of saying I don't want to answer this right now.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure.
Because
and that was the other thing that jumped out at me was when you said it too before we got on the air. Like he said a whole lot without saying anything, yes. And I think he's really good at that. And it was apparent like how much better at this he is than Bob Chapek was. So that's obviously I think a positive, that it just like there's not blowback after every time Bob Chapek's holding something like this.
Right.
I guess just some of the the things he mentioned. He did say that the hiring freeze that was announced is still going to go ahead as planned, at least for now. He said he hasn't used the park reservation system.
Step by step.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so hiring freeze goes as planned. Him coming in as the latest CEO after not being chairman for just about a year now or so. He wasn't going to be announced. Oh, we're hiring everybody again. Like, Wall Street doesn't want to hear that. He could say, yes, the freezing will go ahead as planned and not have to do anything about it and quietly hire the people he wants to hire and whatever, right? So it's basically status quo on that. There's no reason for him to say yes or no.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and he admitted in there it's still, some challenging times going ahead, and they're going to create, reshuffle things and look for some efficiencies and stuff like that. But as we mentioned before, that doesn't mean they're not still going to hire more housekeepers and stuff like that at the parks. That's still needed. It's just they're not going to have this big push for things. He talked about his number one priority being creativity, and that's what like is sort of the driving force for the company, even ahead of like cost efficiency, things like that. But he did sort of position it that he's going to focus on quality over quantity when it comes to that. But even before, he kind of talked about really trying to get more power into the hands of the creative folks, whether it's at Imagineering or in the film studios and stuff like that. So that was sort of a change versus where Chapek was kind of trying to take a lot of the final decisions to more of the finance side, and like maybe some of those final calls away from the creative people. It seems like Iger's trying to bring that back.
Well, let's interpret that. Like, what does that really mean, right? It's great to say, yes, creativity's back. Storytelling is going to be a focus, right? Everybody wants to hear that. That's wonderful. What does that really mean, right? So that's going to be in the him being the CEO position, basically organizing the power structure within the company, whose answers to what, who has the independence to do whatever. But what does that mean for us fans and consumers of that content? That probably might mean less movies that are bombing over the weekend potentially, right? Greenlighting certain stories, giving them higher or lower budgets. Maybe it's made for D plus, so maybe it's not a $300 million film. Maybe it's a $100 million film. So quality over quantity kind of speaks to me like, okay, we had Lightyear, we had Strange World, and all this other stuff. Is that too many? Iger's the one that said, okay, no more Star Wars movies for a while because it's too many. Does that continue on? I don't know. We'll see.
I think that also could have a big role more on like the Disney Plus side, where he also talked about how in the past it was all focused on, building up the subscriber count, and now he needs to focus on bringing it to profitability. So I think rather than just green lighting tons of series just to get content on there might be a little bit more narrowing of scope of the things. Yeah.
Yep.
Somebody asked about the park reservation system, since actually our next topic is going to be a rumor related to that. He said he will be talking with Josh tomorrow about it, but that, nothing to comment about at this time. He did say that he's never used it, which of course prompted myself and a lot of other people to say, if all these executives had to use all the things that, us regular folk have to do to, the hoops we have to jump through to go to the parks, maybe things would change a little faster.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, but we'll see.
We'll talk all about that rumor. There's two things I take away from that specific statement, because there's news coming out about other things that are unrelated to the town hall. Your point about him never using it. So I'm curious how many people actually that work for Disney have used it, other than maybe cast members. And two, he has to talk with Josh tomorrow about it. Maybe does that mean his job is safe? Maybe it's just he's the guy that's in charge of all of it anyway. So it is what it is. So I don't know if we're reading too much into that.
Yep.
We'll see.
They did ask about if they are still going to go ahead with moving Imagineering to Lake Nona. I know that was a rumor that was out there that's been canceled. He said it's not canceled, that it doesn't mean that it's off or whatever, but that he will be looking into it. So it sounds like he's going to sort of reevaluate and kind of see if it still makes sense, or maybe to tweak it a little bit. But he was very clear that this doesn't mean that it's not happening, but I am going to relook at it. So
that's all politics right there.
Exactly. And speaking of politics, he also, there was a lot talking about should Disney get into politics and everything that happened with Ron DeSantis and the Don't Say Gay issue and stuff like that. He put forward, he's like, I think a lot of things people make political that in his mind aren't political, and that Disney, always just represents, all different people, and then kind of, is about storytelling and reflecting the culture and stuff like that. But then he also mentioned, he's like, obviously this is something that we're going to have to deal with, related to the Reedy Creek, and everything like that. But he also said, he's like, Florida's been really good to Disney, but Disney's also been really good to Florida. He kind of added that in there. So I don't know. It's something he knows he's going to have to address. Again, he was probably being, cagey with his responses, but he knows this is something that was an issue between Chapek and DeSantis, and he's going to have to clean it up a bit.
Yep. And I think he has leverage, or at least some leverage, with the state of Florida with it. I think Iger's more savvy to be able to how to wield that leverage properly.
Yeah.
Not to get too deep into this subject
in
any case, but like,
to me, that was the way he worded it, though.
Handle this.
Was just like exhibit A of how he knows how to like address things without addressing them. Whereas Chapek really either tried to ignore it, or then when he did say something, he said it very poorly. So
absolutely.
So that was about it. Like I said, I think, it was good I'm sure it was good for all the cast members to see this. And it was kind of like him sort of trying to rally everyone together and that sort of thing. But obviously he's really, just getting started with things. So don't expect any big announcements anytime soon.
The only thing that I'm kind of surprised at was, he has to find some things, or he has to learn about them or ask about them. He's been the chairman of the board for a good portion of this. I mean, like, he hasn't been gone for a very long time. I mean, like, there was one line saying he was surprised or caught off guard with the price increases at Disney, and it's like, they've been basically on pace for the most part, but they've been adding some extra things you can spend your money.
Yeah, they've been doing it a little bit differently, but it's not like things didn't get expensive under him. So I don't know, but we'll see. We've talked about. I mean, I guess this was some of the rumors, and maybe this is a good way to shift gears to the next story about, rumor about changes coming to park reservations and just other rumors for 2023. But it does seem like it's out there that they know it's very difficult and challenging to plan a vacation and to execute a vacation at Walt Disney World, and that it's something they want to address going forward. So one of the specifics of the rumor that's out there is that guests with date-based tickets, so not annual pass holders, but if you're buying a 5-day ticket or whatever that says I'm going to start on this date, will no longer need to make park reservations. It will basically say Disney knows that because you have so many tickets and you're starting on this date, we kind of know how many people are going to be in the parks collectively. So you don't have to make a park reservation on top of that, which I think makes sense.
That's nice.
However, annual pass holders, because they're not buying a date-based ticket, would still, at least initially, have to make their park reservations.
I mean, that makes sense to me just because APs are used to dealing with blackouts depending on what levels they are and having to go certain days or not. And I think it's fair if annual pass holders that could go any specific time. The only thing that I would like to see is if there's an annual pass holder that also has a hotel stay, it gets reverted to like you have a
Yeah, I mean, they didn't get into the levels of that too.
no.
It's an interesting because from a logistics standpoint, I get it, but at the same time, the annual pass holders, especially local ones, are sort of the people that want the most flexibility and kind of want to just like on a whim go to one of the parks, and this still won't allow that. But on the flip
But
side,
I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm
yeah,
not a
and
local annual pass holder, but I
yeah,
understand why from a business point of view. You have somebody that's spending $10,000 to go down there for a week plus.
yeah,
You want their experience to be better than somebody that's just going into the park for like an afternoon, buying a pretzel and leaving.
right. So we'll see. I mean, I know somebody else, responded to one of my tweets where I was kind of indicating that it seemed, it would help actually more if it was the reverse for the guest. That it really isn't that big of a deal. They're a local pass holder. They just if they want to go that day, they go on and make the reservation. It really hasn't been that many days it's been an issue.
No.
So sometimes I think it's something that gets, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but maybe gets blown out of proportion, but is part of that whole, adds just another level of complexity and another hoop you have to jump through. Speaking of hoops you have to jump through, park hopping. They said the restriction on basically when you're able to park hop will be lifted as well. It said park hopping restriction, so I'm assuming you won't even have to check in necessarily on your first park because you won't have to make a park reservation, right? So you don't have to check in at any one park before going elsewhere. You'll be able to go back and forth between whatever parks. But again, this would just be for date-based ticket holders. Annual pass holders would still have some sort of restriction on their hopping ability because they would still have to make the park reservation. And this is supposed to happen next year. They're talking about as early as July. One thing to mention is this change apparently has been in the works for months. So this isn't something that is just getting started because now Bob Iger's back. So this was in the works under Chapek. So
Interesting that it comes out because Chapek's
yeah,
going to get absolutely zero credit.
zero credit. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is unfortunate for him. But yeah, it kind of, everybody from the outside point of view always goes ahead and looks at Chapek bad, Chapek evil, Iger is the savior. And, yes, I think more of Chapek's problems are leadership issues and how he vocalizes things. He's probably a very smart businessman. You don't get to his position by being a bad business person. And not to be a Chapek defender, because he lacks the vision of somebody that needs to be the CEO of Disney. But I think he does eventually look at, guest surveys and all this other data and attempts to make the decisions to make that better over time. I mean, he did come from the parks, so even if no one comes to the parks anymore, it's going to be an issue. But I'm glad this is coming to pass. But more importantly, though, does this actually change anything for anybody's behavior other than it's just like, oh, it's a nice to have? Like, but how does it change your vacation?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't drastically change my vacation. I'm still gonna know, have a rough idea of like how I'm planning on having all my days mapped out. They'll be in my spreadsheet and stuff like that. Now it does give you a little bit more flexibility during there. Sometimes maybe it's like, oh wow, we got, it rained really bad, so our Magic Kingdom day kind of got ruined. I'd rather, go back there the next day versus, and if I don't have a reservation, maybe I can't.
Sure.
So I think it's like I said, I think it's just one less hoop to jump through, and it's a step in the right direction of trying to simplify things. You know, I can just imagine as somebody who's not used to Disney and has it and is exploring it for the first time, and like, okay, wait, so I have to tell you the days I'm going to be there. I have to buy a ticket that's only for certain days, and then I still on top of that have to make a park reservation. Like, it just feels like a lot of effort just to get in the door. So I think anything they can do to make it easier for that average family to come is a net positive. So in the, in the grand scheme of things, it's not. I don't think it's a huge change, but it's a nice signaling, I think. And like I said, I think that at least they're hearing the guest that they want things to be a bit easier, which I think for a lot of people in the past, it felt like a Disney trip was fairly easy, especially when they still had Magical Express and stuff like that. It kind of felt like, okay, I set everything up beforehand. Kind of once I get to the airport, my trip is kind of already taken care of. Everything's packaged together and stuff like that. And it's lost a lot of that over the years.
Well, let's take a step back and actually look at like the form and function of park reservations. If you're booking this trip and you're going, I don't know, let's say you book it 3 or 4 months in advance, none of the parks are going to be full for reservations 3 or 4 months in advance. You're going to get whatever you want. You can change whenever you want, that sort of thing. And it usually fills up maybe a few weeks before if it's a very busy week. Now, I'm looking at the park reservation availability right now for non-APs. And if you wanted to change any of your park reservations right now for any other park for tomorrow, it's green across the board. You can do whatever you want. And it is for the next 2 days. And then going into December, it only gets Magic Kingdom is not available for Saturday and on Monday. That's it. So you still have the freedom to change things. You still have the freedom to like this. It's an extra step, right? And you might not know you have to do it, or it might be a pain in the butt. But I don't think it actually changes the way anybody goes about their vacations. Typically, what's going to hamper you from going from one place to the next, or just changing your flat out if you have no hoppers, is your ADRs, which are you can never change your ADRs, right? Once you get them, you're stuck with them because there's no way you're going to find something else that close for it. But if you don't have ADRs, you don't have anything binding you to the park, like your some of your the different park tours. What is it? The rhinoceros tour that you guys are doing in Animal Kingdom Lodge. Like, if you don't have something like that, you're free to change, and it's typically only ever Magic Kingdom that's full for the most part. And again, like if you look at even the week of Christmas, the only park that's not available the whole week is Magic Kingdom. On Monday the 26th, it's Hollywood's. And then actually between Christmas and New Year's, it's basically Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios that are full. And then New Year's Eve, it's also Epcot as well, but that's to be expected.
Yeah.
You also shouldn't be going there the week between Christmas and New Year's unless you really like crowds.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's nice that park reservations are going away. I just because everybody hounds on them. I just don't.
Well, we've both had this. Probably won't make for the best podcast because we kind of agree on this, but it's like, we're both surprised whenever, a lot of people are putting up questions similar to what our DBC engagement is like, what do you want to see changed most at the park? And I'm always surprised how many people list park reservations. Like, that's the first thing that comes to their mind that they want to change. And again, I'm not saying I like having to do park reservations, but I think it would be like number 58 or something on my list of things that I would want changed. So, but I guess it bothers a lot of people. I guess it's just a signal of how things have changed from the past. And it's, not many other places do you have to do this, other theme parks and stuff like that. So I guess that's just a negative they want removed. But so,
I mean, I can see it because it's not something that's actually hampering them, but it's the thought that they can't just decide what to do the minute of and do it. They actually have to ask somebody's permission to go to the park.
That's a good way of putting it. And like when you're on vacation, you don't want to have to ask permission. You just want to do what you want to do. So
exactly, you're spending all that money.
Speaking of spending a lot of money,
yes,
Disney has announced the first ever discount of sorts for the Galactic Star Cruiser. I think we've mentioned this when we were going through our topic last week, or a few weeks ago, that there were cruises leaving that were only like 25% full. It's kind of wide open if you wanted to book. So in an effort to I guess, try to fill some spots, Disney has announced a bit of a discount, but all it is for DVC members who were going to use DVC points to pay for their cruise. That's now been reduced by 30%, the number of points you would need to use, which, from talking to some DVC folks, even at 30% off, is still not a good use of points. But it's just interesting that they're at least doing anything.
Yeah,
So,
not that I'm a DVC expert whatsoever, and I don't pay attention to that side of things. My first inclination is there a glut of points out there that people aren't using that they want to kind of get out of the system, and this is a good way for maybe somebody to kind of dump a bunch of points into it and then maybe stay for a couple extra days for, like, you know, a regular stay type of thing. But I don't know. I don't know. Is this trying to entice people that have DVC? Because people that have DVC points, they know how to spend their points. Right?
Yeah.
They know the value of everything, right? And I don't really hear a lot of DVC members using their DVC points on like cruises and, you know, all the other extra stuff. They use the points where they get full value for them. So I don't know. I'm curious. I don't think we'll ever know how many points are actually used on cruises, but it'll be interesting to see that. Even on an anecdotal point of view, like I booked on DVC points. If anybody actually does it, we'll see.
And this topic, and I should have mentioned it before, is another topic, is just kind of wanted to have a cheap plug for our friend Matt's podcast, the Happily Everything Disney podcast. This last episode, they had Scott Gustin on, who talked about a lot of the rumors that he's hearing from insiders. Obviously, we've had Scott on the show before, a great guest. But he mentioned about this, that he thinks it's just Disney kind of putting out a test, a feeler out there to see, does this have an impact? And if it does, then they'll try other discounts and stuff like that. But, even if, say, they discount the price 20%, are there that many people that are like, oh, I'd pay $4,500 to do this, but I can't pay $5,000 to do it? Or, it's kind of like, if you're really willing to do it, you're probably going to be able to pay it. And I mean, I guess some people just see sale or whatever, and maybe it attracts them. But
I mean, yeah, you're always going to get somebody that says, "Oh, I'll take advantage of the extra $500 savings and go."
Yeah.
It's not going to be a lot of people that do that.
And are they losing more money in the end from people that would have gone anyway, but now are getting it at a cheaper price? So I don't know.
Well, I mean, Disney's not that stupid to do that type of thing, because I think they're trying to entice the greater audience, right?
Yeah.
So the test of 500, I don't think they're going to do a $500 thing. I think they're going to hide the cost in somewhere else, but they'll do like save 40% on a Star Cruiser's stay with any 3-night stay at a deluxe resort or some kind of.
I think that's what they need to do. I mean, we've talked about it in the past, like changing up how they do the cruises, but I think that's another good point where rather than focusing just on this, say, package it as part of a larger trip to Disney. And so they're still getting a ton of money out of the guest, but maybe the specific component of it is a little bit of a savings.
Well, here's another free one for Disney. Why not pay full price for Star Cruiser, but get a 70% discount on your deluxe hotel stay and any congruent stay? So you stay Saturday, you do a 3-day sailing over the weekend, and then you do minimum 4 days at a deluxe resort at a 70, assuming that they have availability at that resort type of thing. That's a way to fill the rooms, get people into the parks, and I mean, that's a no-brainer to me if you're really looking for people. I mean, you have to spend the big bucks to do the thing, but then you could then you don't downgrade yourself going from the Star Cruiser and it's very good, accommodations
Experience
to go staying at All Stars, right? You don't downgrade yourself. You're still staying at, a top-notch Disney resort. So that might be a way.
Yeah. And then I guess on the other aspect of this is it costs a lot of money for Disney to run the cruise with how many cast and actors and stuff there are. So is this even a good thing? I know I saw one tweet from Leslie, who we had on the show in the past. She's done the Star Cruiser, has it booked again. And she was basically like upset to see that there are discounts coming out because she's afraid it's going to cheapen the experience. Because if they're taking in less revenue, they got to figure out how to get the same margins out of it. And the only way to do that is to sort of cut back elsewhere. So hopefully they don't get to that point. I'd rather see them change up, or at least have, okay, once a week, we're going to give you the full blown experience at the full price, but now we don't. And then the other times it's a different experience at a different price point, but we don't have to fill up the rooms every day at, $5,000 a trip. So,
or Disney can just make some really awesome Star Wars movies and shuffle it around for whatever new trilogy that they're going to do in 2 to 3 years from now.
Or
and that'll be a way to refresh that.
switch it to featuring Andor.
Exactly. You got to think on their feet here a little bit. I don't think anybody wants to go and see Rey and everybody else anymore. I think they just want lightsabers and stormtroopers, and that's basically it. But what do I know?
So that'll do it for the news this week. Moving on to our takes.
Our takes.
Our takes. I took this as attractions of yesteryear. So everyone always thinks fondly about like, oh, what attraction from that went away do you miss the most that you want to come back? But let's think about it. So which of those rides that used to be around before are actually in our minds now properly rated, underrated, or overrated?
I cheated on this one, by the way. Phil's very angry with me because I don't have anything to talk about. So are we going to go overrated, both of us, and then go through the list? Or are we going to do all three at once for each one?
Let's do our two. We'll do our two overrated, and then so you're overrated, then my overrated. You're properly rated. Yeah.
So my overrated was basically how everything was 10 or 15 years ago, and it's always 10 or 15 years ago. Somebody would have said 10. Disney World was better 10 or 15 years ago in 2005, in 2010, 2015, et cetera, et cetera. It's basically nostalgia telling you everything was always better back in the day, right? It's youth and nostalgia that's always going to. I just hate that argument from people. So when people say, oh, cast members were better 10 or 15 years ago, or rides were better 10 or 15, Imagineering was better. I mean, like, that whole statement is overrated. The parks being better 10 or 15 years ago is all over. Everything about that is basically overrated as a thought process.
Nostalgia clouds your mind and says everything.
Well, I mean, it's you make new memories every single time you go. Like, come on, just like open yourself up to new things. That's my point. I hate that. It just bothers me tremendously when people say that. What is your overrated?
So I took it a little bit more specific and literally. And I do want to preface this so don't hear what I'm not saying. But I said Horizons is overrated, not because I don't love Horizons. It was amazing when I did it, 30 years ago.
Okay.
But I think people talk about it that it should never have gone away and it was the greatest thing ever. And the fact that Disney let it go is the biggest crime. But the reason they closed it was attendance at it was low. Like people got tired of it. Now, if they brought back like Horizons 2.0 now with modern technology and like, basically enhanced it and everything, it would be amazing and people would love it. But just this idea of like, if they left it as is for the last 30 years, it would be this amazing like e-ticket that everybody would go to because it was so awesome. I think that's a little bit overblown and that there's a reason they let it crumble and then knock the whole building down.
Well, I mean, that leads me to my properly rated attraction of yesteryear, which is basically everything Epcot from the 1980s, right? I think everybody has fond memories of that Epcot, and I think it's properly rated because it was like probably the only span of time Epcot has truly been under one unified like vision, right?
Yes.
Because right now you've got an amazing World Showcase that's constantly either been updated, or you get new food, or you get people from around the world working there, and it's all great stuff. And then slowly everything in Future World is just basically getting outdated or changed, or is now a construction pit, or it needs refurbishment, or it's, Figment that's gone through all their iterations, et cetera, et cetera. When Epcot was in the 80s, was brand spanking new, it was pretty good. And then in the early 90s, it started kind of drifting away because things have been aging. And then they brought it back with festivals in Iser's years in the mid to late 90s. And it went through kind of like a renaissance as the park. But everybody has nostalgia. I mean, I just got done saying everything from 10 to 15 years ago was overrated. But I think the Epcot from its true opening vision was properly rated. Yeah. Everybody loves it. And I think everybody's given its proper due, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, especially if you're not saying this specific attraction, but just the cohesiveness of Future World and stuff like that. I think that's a great call. I actually said properly rated is the original Journey into Imagination. I mean, maybe some people overblow it a little bit with how much they loved it, but it was just a really well done attraction. It had some unique elements to it. It was kind of a timeless theme and stuff like that. Now, obviously, it would need to be updated and maintained and stuff like that, but I think people that only see the current version of Journey into Imagination like don't get why we don't like it as much because
Yeah.
we saw the original, that sort of a thing. So I think the reason people look back fondly on it so much is well deserved.
Now, I would agree with you. I was never on the original Journey into Imagination, so I can't speak by personal ref, but I've seen the plans and you've seen the videos on it, that type of thing. And obviously it's been deteriorated just from a design point of view, regardless of upkeep point of view. But I would only speak against this one, and I might personally push this to overrated because people overrate Figment and like the whole thing way more. Like they put Figment almost on the level of Mickey Mouse, right? At some points. And everybody's deserving their own opinion, right? I'm not saying it's wrong. I just think some people go a little bit crazy for a character that was on a ride and several versions of a walk around character, but never had the grandiose of a lot of other things that get
Sure.
similar attention. So, I mean, I think Populator is fine, but I think you could also make an argument for overrated from a certain point of view.
Yep, I can't disagree with that. Although he does have a really snazzy sweater back on.
That's true. That's true.
Overlay.
All over Twitter this week too.
Yeah.
My underrated one is the Magic Kingdom Skyway. I always love getting different points of view anywhere in the park. And I have to say, I forget when this was closed down, but it was like the mid 90s, I think it was finally shut down.
Somewhere around there.
Because
I definitely went on it my first couple trips in like the mid 80s. So it was either late 80s or early 90s it went away.
I want to say that I was on this also when I was like 8 years old in the late 80s. But I'm also might have been confusing this with other Sky Bucket rides from a lot of the other theme parks that I've been on. So my memories are a little hazy. But I do remember seeing these at the parks, moving and everything else like that. I think it adds a really great kinetic energy to the parks and things that you can see and stuff like that. So I always thought that was really cool. And obviously they're the forebearers of the Skyliner. Around property, so I think they're overrated. I think people don't talk about them as much as they should. They're buckets that were hanging from string over over Magic Kingdom, which is, there's a big building in the distance for a Tron, and people sight lines. You got wire and big buckets in the original design for the Magic Kingdom that destroy sight lines. So I think they're underrated.
And apparently it closed in 99.
There you go, even later than I thought.
So. And I said for my underrated is Alien Encounter, extraterrestrial. It wasn't open for a very long period of time in the Magic Kingdom. It probably was a little ahead of its time for a Disney park. Probably was in the wrong park. I think if it was in Hollywood Studios or MGM at that time, it would have lasted a lot longer. But it was just such a well done experience and something completely unique for Disney. It was legit scary. And I think it was just, but they didn't promote it properly, and people I think didn't realize it was going to be as scary as it was when they went in. They're like, "Oh, it's Disney. It's how scary can it be?" And then they were like, literally, really, really scared. So I just think it got a little underappreciated because people flipped out about the fright factor. But when you see how popular a lot of scary things are nowadays, if in the right context, like I said, if it was at Hollywood Studios now or something like that, I think it would be rather popular.
That's another thing we've talked about this. I don't know how many times over the years. It's Tomorrowland needs capacity. Magic Kingdom needs capacity, and all those buildings that are closed over there need stuff shoved in them to get people in there and eat them up. But yeah, I think that's like an overrated thing that people kind of forget was actually part of the parks. And it's always good to come in. Hey, did you know that Magic Kingdom had an alien attraction, and you can feel him breathing over your shoulder?
Yeah,
and be like, what? So that it was unexpected and underrated. Let's put it that way.
Good. And so that'll do it for our takes. A reminder of our social media accounts. Please let us know any attractions that you think that have gone away are either overrated or underrated. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. We are all at the DBC Pod. And please join our Discord server and join the conversation. Speaking of that, wanted to welcome new Discord member Dale B. And also a quick update to the Disney Comeback Index. I did see it was just updated a few hours ago with Takumite reopening. That pushed it up to 92.44%, up from 92.15. So slight movement. I don't think we're going to get much additional movement on that this year. I think that might be the final point. Even some of the things that were supposed to come out this year, there was now Disney took away from the information pages about Epcot and Hollywood Studios having trams. So it looks like those trams might
Whoops.
not return this
How
year.
do you not have trams?
I know it's really bad. That should be like sort of like not an optional thing. Like that should have to be required. But so yeah, so it looks like we're getting to the excuse me, the end of the line for at least for 2022. We'll see what 2023 brings to the Disney Comeback Index.
Looking forward to it. We'll certainly do, especially with Matt, a prediction show for 2024 after the new year as things kind of round out for the holidays, that type of thing.
We should recap our 2022 predictions sometimes and go through everything we got wrong.
Well, we do save them now, so that's good. So we can call each other out. And it's always nice to look back, for sure. All right, for this week's topic, we're just going to talk about some last-minute plans for my trip. I mean, this always started as a planning podcast, even though we kind of shifted through a lot of different iterations over the last couple of years. But in the heart, we do love our spreadsheets and organizing things. And I have to say, I am terrified for my upcoming trip. And I've said this for the last couple of weeks. It's, I could plan a Disney trip in my sleep. I know how to do it. It's relatively easy and it's fun. I enjoy it. But I don't want to make the mistake, because I've never been down there during the holiday Christmas season. I don't want to miss some of the Christmassy things. So I've spent all my time saying, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. This makes a great Disney trip. But where do I fit in all the extra Christmas stuff that can be done? Am I going to be able to absorb it organically, or do I have to plan it? And so I'm now paranoid. I'm as paranoid as Phil is on learning how to use Genie Plus.
No, I'm feeling similar about some of the holiday stuff too. It's like, if you focus only on that, are we going to forget to do like the regular theme park stuff too?
Exactly. So right now, a couple updates. So my 2 Magic Kingdom days got shifted for time. Magic Kingdom is now open to 11 p.m. each night, which gives me a little bit more leniency about going back to the resort and then heading back to the parks. And I don't know if we're going to make it to 11 o'clock, but if, for the example, our first day, and I'll go through this day by day. So I did finally book a hotel to stay down there on my first day there. So our check-in day is the 7th. We're driving down late on the 5th. So we were getting there a day before our check-in, because I was talking to my wife. I was like, look, I'm going to be doing all the driving for the most part, and I don't want to show up having driven throughout the night and then starting our vacation. That's just going to make my first day miserable, and I'm going to push myself, and then the next day I'm going to even be more tired, and it's just going to snowball from there. So we're going to drive down a day early, and we went on hotwire.com, and I looked at some of their express deals or hot deals. I forget what they call them on that site. And I got this Silver Lake Resort, which I don't know if I mentioned this last week on the show. I got it for $70 for the night for the room, which is quite excellent. It's about a mile away from Animal Kingdom. And if you're interested on how to predict which resort you get, because this is a blind deal, right? You give them $70 and then they tell you what hotel you're booking at. And usually they can tell you how far you are away from certain amenities. And it said you're 1 mile away from Animal Kingdom, and the only resort in the area that's 1 mile away is the Silver Lake Resort. So we kind of figured that out. So we're going to go down there. I don't know what time we're going to get down there. Hopefully right around check-in time, check into our room, relax for a minute, and then go over to Disney Springs. So what do we do at Disney Springs? I'm going to be completely exhausted, so I don't want to do too much. I don't want to do like a full meal. So I've got my spreadsheet up here, and I just listed a whole bunch of different things I want to do at Disney Springs. Whether we do them or not, I don't know. But there's a couple food items and drinks, like the Christmas Old Fashioned at Boathouse or the Candy Cane Margarita at Dockside. I'm probably not going to have both, because if I drink one beverage, I'm going to be tired after that, and we're still driving. The peppermint chocolate bark nachos is a family favorite, apparently. So we're going to try that. That's at Swirls on the Water. There's the Christmas tree stroll that we're going to be checking out. There's a bunch of different stores. I haven't been to Disney Springs in quite some time, so we're going to check out all the other normal stores that you like to kind of peruse through. I know there's a photo pass for Santa there, so we're going to kind of check that out and get some pictures taken. I don't know how that's going to work with my photo pass not working till the next day, so I'm going to have to somehow figure that out. So it is what it is. So we're gonna go back to our room, and then the next day we're thinking, all right, how do we do this logistically? Now, Phil, tell me what you would do. So we're staying the day before. We have Magic Kingdom tickets for our first day. Our check-in is at 3 or 4 o'clock. It might be done. Our room might be ready at 10 a.m. like it was back in July. Who knows? But I'm expecting late
I
afternoon.
definitely wouldn't plan for that.
No, I wouldn't either. I'm not,
Yeah.
by the way. And the only thing I have on my list that's a hard time is a 2 o'clock hour reservation for Crystal Palace. So I want to get most out of my day. So that typically means rope drop. I got to get to Crystal Palace at 2, and I got to get to check in. But I also want to get back and watch Enchantment and stuff for that night. So how would you do that logistically throughout the whole day? How would you run that? That's the only thing I like.
Yeah.
Going to the parks, going back to the resort, eating at Crystal Palace. How would you run that?
What time is your Crystal Palace again? Sorry.
2:30.
2:30. So, I mean, if you think you can be up in time and get there for rope drop, I would try to do that and take advantage of it, and then see kind of take the benefits of that, and then I would go back and trek into the resort and drop your bags and stuff like that. If you think that's doable, but
I think we go right. I'm going to try to push for rope drop because what else are we doing at a resort that we're getting kicked out of anyway, right?
yeah,
Because we don't have rooms there. And then so we rope drop. We just bring everything loaded into our car and park in the TTC. Get in there. We thought about parking at the resort and then taking the buses over, but I don't want to add that extra level of finagling.
yeah. That was actually running through my mind just as you were talking, because if you park at Magic Kingdom, then you have to do the monorail or the ferry and stuff like that. So you have kind of that extra step anyway. Whereas if you would just go right to your resort, check your bags or just leave them in the car and then go get on the bus, then that brings you right to the gate. You don't have to worry about that extra stop. And then you don't have to move the car afterwards. So
park opens at 9. So this is all being done before that too.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to get to your resort at 6:37.
I know. Well, that's the thing. Or I wake up at 6:30 and 7, I make my way over to the TTC. And it's usually like an hour between parking and actually walking.
Yeah, so you'd want to be in the TTC by 7:30 so you could take the thing over and be there in time for rope drop.
But then leaving the park, it's really easy to get back to the resort too.
Right.
You're just hopping on.
You don't have to go back and get your car and stuff like that. That's a tough one.
This is a TBD. I'm going back and forth on this one. This is why I wanted to bring this up. So I think we're doing it right. We're going to go to Crystal Palace, regardless if we drive to the parks or take the bus to the parks. From that point, we're leaving, going back to the resort, ease in, take a nap or something, and then this will be the time where we go back to the parks in the evening. So I'm thinking like we probably get back and into our rooms around 4-ish or so with a 2:20, 2:30 reservation at Crystal Palace. So an hour. Then maybe an hour to get to whatever. So let's say 4:30 we get back there. We come back to the parks around 7 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ease into things and hang out for a while and just see how the night goes. And all the while, I'm stacking at Magic Kingdom. And
yeah, I mean, that could be the other way you go is don't worry about rope drop that first day. Just start kind of stacking Genie Plus in the morning. Just go over your resort and then kind of like just get over whenever you get over. I don't know. That might be a little easier if you can't get up and out.
Of course it's easier, but like, is it going to be like nipping at my toes? Like, you're not there. Why aren't you there? You're just you're having your free breakfast at this resort. Like, we should be in Main Street right now, right? So that's always going to be biting me. And usually when we're there, my kids wake up early anyway. We all wake up early anyway. It's just like, we might as well just go and do it. See what happens. Yeah. Okay. So then we have a Hollywood Studios day, normal, nothing going. Then we have on our third full day there, we have Epcot. Epcot has moved to a 9 to 9:30 timeline right now, open to close. So we got an extra hour, I forget what it was previously. I think it's open just a little bit later. And then I finally got my Akershus reservation that I've
Yay!
been been going after. Shout out to Touring Plans Reservation Finder. They were able to notify me at like 6 o'clock at night. My wife was looking at me oddly why I sprinted quickly off the couch and into my office because I tried doing it on my phone. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it on my phone. I got to do it in my web browser. And we got a 315 for Akershus, which I gobbled up because I know nothing else. And then I will try to get it at a different time. But I think this is actually a pretty good time for everything because last week you promoted a really cool app. What was it called? The Food and Wine Dining app.
It's
What was the name of it?
WDW Food and Wine. So you
This
search
app,
for WDW Food and Wine, and then it has all the different Epcot festivals in there.
it is absolutely amazing what they're doing. They have literally there was a allears.net YouTube channel put out about an hour and a half show about they went to every single booth and tasted probably I would say 60% of what they had, if not 100% of at least the
I
food
think they did
items.
almost all the food. I don't think they got all the drinks, but
I'm not worried
they
about
did
the
a
drinks at
lot
this
of the
point.
food.
Yeah, I mean, some of the places have a couple different types of
Yeah.
beers, and it's
Yeah.
that doesn't really go through on TV. However, I sat there with the app with my wife saying, "Do you like that? Do you like that? Star, star, star." I mean, we just went through the whole list, and so I think that was awesome to kind of do in tandem with each other. So there's my paranoia of missing things at Epcot. I'm like, all right, this is what I want. I have to spend $120, and that's pretty cheap because I don't think there was a lot of alcohol in there, Phil.
I
But
was
that
going
was
to say, I
$120
think
worth of
I
stuff.
must have starred a lot more alcohol than you because I think my
You
total
did.
was around 250. I mean, not that
Well,
I'm getting all of it, but that's just how
yeah.
many things appeal to me.
I'm pretty sure there's going to be an extra margarita here and there that I purchase
Yeah.
as for buying food. So
Yeah, when you're at the
that's
booth
really
anyway,
good.
and you're like, throw in the margarita.
Yeah, exactly. So we're doing that. So I'm like, all right, we got all the festival stuff. We're going to do the cookie stroll as we do all these things. We're going to have a good time with that. And then we were originally wanted to do a very late, as late as possible breakfast at Riviera, but Topolino's had nothing, and I gave
Yeah.
up kind of searching for it. But we'll go Epcot throughout the morning, and then we go to lunch, and then this would be a good time to like leave and come back. But I don't know if I want to come back later because we'll be done at 4. We get back to our resort by like 4:35. What are we doing? We're gonna sit around for an hour and then come back. So maybe we go back a little bit earlier and then come back for our meal at
Oh,
Akershus.
maybe. I can see how you're
Maybe
doing. Yeah. I mean, that's
maybe
a good one maybe to play by the ear. Like, do we need a bigger break? Do we need to
yeah.
muscle through? Are we going to make it through the night to see, Harmonious and stuff? Are you did you get the Akershus Candlelight Processional package or just
No,
separate?
I've got
Okay.
Candlelight Processional for Monday.
Okay.
Our
Oh,
last
so you don't have
day
to
there.
worry about that night at least.
Nope.
So, yeah.
So this is just like we want to see all the princesses, so we don't have to worry about the story tail hall at Magic Kingdom or any of that other type of stuff. So that's a choice. Like, where do we do a break, right? So I'm still kind of figuring out. And then our Magic Kingdom day is the next day. Nothing big there. We have Be Our Guest at 3 p.m. All of our dinners are basically at like 3 o'clock. We have Tusker House at Animal Kingdom at 3 o'clock. All of our big meals are at 3, which I'm okay with, right?
Yeah.
We have a late breakfast, late lunch, big meal, and then maybe just like snacks for the rest of the day, and probably save a lot of money not having to buy like an actual
No, I
lunch
think it
bucket
makes
every
sense
time
to
with
do.
everything.
I mean, whenever you do it, but just having one big meal and having it in the middle of the day works out well, I think.
Yep. The only issue is we wanted to take breaks in the middle of the day, and this kind of prevents us from doing that. So I'm going to be trying to push some of these back later in the day so we can have like a 3 or 4 hour break in the middle of the day for most of the days, these days. So we'll see. But our Magic Kingdom day, our break is going to be probably around noon, or if not a little bit earlier. We're going to go to the Grand Floridian and check out the gingerbread house and stuff like that. But that hasn't changed. The only other big thing that's changed is Animal Kingdom is basically open like an hour later, an hour earlier. The day we're there, because I think it was like 9 to 7 it was open or something originally, and now it's open 8 to 8.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself at Animal Kingdom. We're going to be a lot of walking. We're going to see all the shows. We're going to get cranky, but luckily night gets night at like 6 o'clock. And it's been one of my bucket lists of staying in this park until it's very dark. And
Yeah.
I can't wait for that. So that's our big thing. So, and then the last day is Epcot with Candlelight Processional. Here's the thing. Here's my paranoia, right? So underneath all of this, I'm like, okay, great. I've got the list for Epcot. I know where all the treats are. We're going to sample all these foods. I'm like, oh, right. There's all this other stuff that's going on there. There's like Santa and the storytellers and all this other stuff. So I got this like chart that I put together with like all the different things on it and what times there are. And it's just like, oh, okay. Not that I have to hit up every one of them.
No,
But
that's definitely a big one. Like the storytellers, we're going to pick like a couple that we really want to see and make sure we see them and stuff. Like it's.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but I don't want to miss any of them, right?
I know.
But that's the thing. Like Epcot's great because you're going around and do the whole festival things, but you also don't want to spend all your time being online for Guardians of the Galaxy and Remy and all this other stuff. I want to just kind of wander with a beverage and have the kids watch things and kind of suck things in, that type of thing. So I got to be mindful of that. And I've got food listed at all the different parks that I want to try. There's a handful of different type of treats that we're going to try at each different one. And I'm pretty sure I'm boring everybody at this point, but there's a lot. And I think the holiday stuff is going to come to you at the parks, just being there with all the decorations.
Yeah, especially I'm thinking like Hollywood Studios and stuff like that. There's a lot of fun decorations that are just kind of there and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm not going to force myself to kind of do all that type of stuff. So those are those are my final plans. If we end up doing a show next weekend, which I think we're going to try to do, I will not update you and bore you with anything else unless something major changes. But I think that's basically what it is. We're a week out. I'm excited to go, and I can't wait. So going on to our top three this week, we're gonna that we were doing last week, but we saved for this week is top 3 holidays you want to spend at Walt Disney World. So this one's kind of limited. But in order, this week is in order toward the one that we want to spend the most at, and then basically our top 3. We're going to go back and forth. I'm going to go first for the sake that I'm just still talking. The one holiday that I want to spend at Walt Disney World that I never did was 4th of July. They do a really cool fireworks show. There's a lot of Americana kind of just kind of feels American-y.
Yeah.
Walt Disney World, right? They do a good celebration with that. So that just kind of feels really cool. Second one is the Christmas season, which I'm going to do. I'm scratching this off my bucket list with all the decorations. If this goes off the way I want to do it, this might be the normal time that we go down from here on out, at least for a weekend. And then another thing I want to do, and I don't know when I would ever actually do it, is I want to spend New Year's Eve at Epcot, even though it's a madhouse at Epcot. I don't know if I do that when my kids are older and they can take care of me when it gets too late. Growing up in Jersey, being an hour-long train ride to get into New York City, I never even thought about going into, Manhattan on New Year's Eve. That just no interest to me. But I have interest in being at Epcot on New Year's Eve for some reason. So, and I can't tell you why. It's just probably like a cool vibe that I would want to do, and hopefully someday I get to check that out. But we'll see. So, Phil, what are your top 3 holidays you want to spend at Walt Disney World?
Yeah, so you hit on a number of the ones that I would do, especially 4th of July and New Year's Eve. So I thought Drew was trying to think of other ones. First one might be recency bias since we just celebrated it, but I thought being there for Thanksgiving would actually be nice. I've also been watching other YouTube, because we have the cruise coming up. There are a lot of people talking about how they go on cruises over Thanksgiving, and just the idea of like going somewhere for Thanksgiving week and not necessarily dealing with like the planning of the meal and all the leftovers. Like kind of you just go and you like, because a lot of places will still have like a Thanksgiving meal on Thanksgiving, right. A lot of the restaurants, but you're kind of like just away from everything. It just sounds relaxing after like a regular Thanksgiving week and stuff like that. So
maybe,
like I said,
I could see
maybe
that.
recency bias.
We'll ask you again in like 4 months.
Yeah. You mentioned about not doing Christmas Day. I put Christmas Day on there. I know it actually can be, especially Christmas morning, can be kind of quiet in the parks because everyone's kind of like slowly getting out of bed and opening gifts and stuff. And I think it might just be fun to be somewhere else for Christmas and have like different gifts and stuff like that and just celebrating Christmas there. So I think that could be fun. And then the last one, which isn't, I guess, technically a holiday, but I thought being there for any of my kids' birthdays I think is a
That'd be
fun,
cool.
like, to be there for their actual birthday and kind of celebrate it and do it as especially if it was like a milestone birthday or something like that. But kind of trying to put a little extra attention on them and embarrass them and stuff like that would be fun.
I could see the only one, like the kid's birthday one is really cool. I don't see Thanksgiving, even though I love Thanksgiving at home. So I don't know if I could ever do that. But Christmas Day, I always said I would never want to spend Christmas Day because I love being at home, waking up early and being in your own home with your Christmas tree and all that other stuff. But I can see when you're older and all the kids are late teens or in their 20s, kind of going down there, that type of thing, that might be cool. Like 1 year to kind of do something like that. I can see myself wanting to do that, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm open to it. Not
Yeah,
anything.
that's a good point. Like, yeah, now maybe now that my kids are getting older, and like the younger ones still want to be, the Christmas Day morning thing, but even like, the teenager, like we have to like wake her up, like, hello, do you want to open presents? Like, hello, like,
Yeah, when it gets to the point where it's more cynical than like
yeah,
excitement, you're like, okay, whatever, right? It kind of wears off on you a little bit.
yep,
I can see that. All right, let's shift over to this week's or last week's DBC engagement. The question we asked the community was, what do you most want to see changed in the parks with Iger back? What would you like to see rolled back or moved forward? I mean, obviously within reason, he's not going to get. I mean, I think we said he's not going to get rid of park reservations, and well, they were already on the chopping block.
yeah,
So maybe some things are actually more viable than not. The one thing that I said before we get into everything else, I mean, this is one thing I really want, and I think it's going to be most impactful in his opportunity to do it. And there's many other things that we can discuss, but my number one thing is better wages for the cast members. I think that would have an immense ripple effect throughout the
yep,
parks. Um, they're already at $15 an hour, but they're also a dollar or two short of what Universal's minimum wage is. So I think it's going to do two things. If they raised it to, I don't know, I'm not a businessman that's hiring hundreds or tens of thousands of people, but I think if they were in the $17 to $19 range for depending on where you're starting, I think that'll go a long way with impacting the cast members' disposition and their cheerfulness and their willing and desire to work at Disney. It's just going to give them so much more respect for their job when they're treated to have more than just this is just a minimum wage job type of thing.
yep,
And it would also have the fact that they might attract more people to come work with them, so there'd be less labor shortage. Have the parks operations actually get back to full capacity, not park capacity, but full capacity for running the rides and the
yep,
restaurants and all this other stuff. So I think that would be like probably the biggest thing. And they have negotiations with the union coming up, so it might be
yeah. They're actually
opportune
back to the
moment.
table to tomorrow, so we'll see what happens there. I know, just the cost of living in Orlando has gone up so much in the last, like, say, 5 years that
Mm,
when they moved it up to 15, that was above sort of what's needed as a minimum cost of living, and now it's
not
not. So,
anymore.
yeah, exactly. So hopefully they can do that right. Um, Mine's like somewhat similar related to your last point about the having sufficient labor is just improving the overall guest experience. Putting that front and center, whether that is things like removing the park reservation, but just kind of making it easier. But I would really start with ride maintenance. We have somebody on our Discord, Doxy's down there now, and she said she's really noticing just how many rides are down, or just somebody that's always keeping track of everything not working on Splash Mountain and stuff like that. Like, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
they need to, we talked about that article about how the ride downtimes and stuff like that are impacting things. So I think getting that back up to Disney standards, for lack of a better way of saying it, and just overall park cleanliness and just making it sort of that top-notch world-class experience that isn't adding 10 new rides. It's just, let's make sure everything we have is working well and clean and stuff like that. I think that would be a nice start.
That would be huge. No, because like I notice, like I'll pop in and whether it's on our Discord or any of the number of forums that I kind of peruse, like I'll jump into a trip report that somebody wrote randomly. I mean, there's hundreds all over the place. Somebody takes the time to kind of talk about their trip, and I usually, if I have some time, I'll pick on one randomly. And one of the themes of all of these trip reports is downtime or getting stuck on rides constantly, and that doesn't surprise me anymore. So that would be a huge improvement. And then cleanliness, like I was shocked on the Magic Kingdom days in my summer trip, and how much dirt or not dirt, excuse me, like garbage that were in the lines, like just empty soda bottles and soft drink cups and garbages that were just full, and it's just like It's unbelievable. It was basically, granted, it was the crowd that was there. Also, it was a lot of teenagers running around too. Not to disparage teenagers out there, but maybe you guys aren't as mindful as anybody, other groups of people. But
I don't know.
it
I don't
felt like
think
a
it's an
Six
age
Flags.
thing in this day and age. I think
No,
everybody's
I know.
all over.
But
is
there
guilty of
there
that.
were a lot of just like groups of kids running around. It
Yeah.
felt like a Six Flags almost, and not just because of the age of the people around me, but like usually by the end of the day at Six Flags, like the garbage cans are full and they're ready to be tossed out, and I felt that tremendously when I went there. So I'm definitely down with you. The community had there was basically a theme that basically says go back to 2019 and just go back there and just that's your baseline, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably not going to happen. Yulin was saying that from a cast member point of view, front of the park and resort merchandise delivery. We talked about that last week, or was it last week or 2 weeks ago with Matt?
Yeah.
Getting your, like, you want to buy something, get sent back to your hotel, or at least the front of the park, that type of thing. She stressed maintenance on everything. Lumpy just wanted everything back to summer of 2019. And that includes things like, and we're talking about this today on Discord right now, is my Magical Express and baggage type of stuff, all inclusive, making Disney feel special and different from everything. That's what a lot of people want, regardless of Genie Plus and Park Reservations. I think it's you get something more when you go to Disney, not just like it's just another vacation that you have to worry about getting to the hotel and that type of thing. So I think the theme again was all inclusive, less work and more perks. Our friend Matt was like, we just need more bubble perks. There needs to be a better reason other than you can hop on a bus to get to a park to stay at a Disney resort.
Yep.
In my opinion. Anything you wanted to add to that overall?
Just kind of building off that. I mean, the way I think, I know in business, there's always that saying of like, you can have something like good, cheap, or fast. You pick two. You can't get all three. And it feels like with Disney right now, it's like they're trying to have things that are like expensive, a reduced experience, and complicated. And it's like, you can't have all three of those. Like, if you're going to charge that premium, you need to make it an easy process and like, high quality. And that's what I think what everybody wants. I don't think, not that people want to spend more money, but I think people are willing to pay the price to have a Disney experience. They just want that high quality experience that's easy to do, isn't a ton of work, and doesn't feel like a chore. And hopefully they can get back to that. And a lot of the things that people are talking about would help enable that. It would just make your trip easier. So hopefully that's the focus. I think that's what they want to look at, but we'll see.
I think one of the what's interesting is, one of the fun things about the Disney Dish podcast with Len Testa and Jim Hill is they do like almost a weekly segment where they go over surveys, right? So Disney loves their surveys. I always get one after one of our trips. So to me, it feels like they're taking that data and they're not following through on a lot of that stuff. And hopefully Iger takes a lot of that stuff seriously. I mean, there's articles all over the place where streaming is losing money. The movies are tanking all over the place, even though they're ignoring Wakanda doing very well and that type of thing. But the parks are their moneymaker, and there's only so far you can stretch them thin without actually giving them pretty good upkeep.
Yep.
So maybe that might be like simple things like that, reducing downtime, adding bubble perks that really don't cost them much of anything, like you get free Genie Plus if you stay at a resort. That's like a giveaway instead of like a dining plan at this point. Like you could start seeing these extra perks start coming back. I don't think Magical Express is coming back. I think you might have discounts on minivans potentially if you stay there. Like it'll be like, you can do all that stuff. I don't think you're getting your baggage sent to your rooms again. I don't think they're ever going to be doing that. Because I don't think they're going into the airports anymore to do that type of thing.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong. I would love to see that. But like, I think the only perk staying at the parks other than getting in a half hour early, which I actually prefer versus the old version, like deluxe, you're going to be able to go to the parks later every single day. Why is that only deluxe that costs so much money versus everything else? So I'd like to see more perks for staying at the resorts.
Yeah.
That
even if the deluxe get some extra things, but like, so maybe like at one park it's just for deluxe, but everybody else can go to another park late that night or something like that, where like they do get some.
I think deluxe deserves more perks. You're spending so much money on these resorts, and the resorts are beautiful, well themed, but you're not getting amazing accommodations
Right.
across the board for a lot of these things compared to the price. Like if I took that money and stayed at a hotel in New York City or anywhere else, I mean, $700 a night is going to get me a lot in a lot of different
Yeah.
places. And certain Disney resorts have a lot of good restaurants and options and stuff like that. Some of them don't have quite amazing dining options that are worth $700 a night, right? There's not a Michelin star restaurant everywhere, so to speak, right? So again, this is off track, but I think adding bubble perks to customers, it's going to be interesting going back to the survey stuff. If this time next year or mid-year, when all the people that have going on their Disney vacation always expected the Disney quality and they were willing to go through all the new hoops and everything else, because everything else has been changed in their lives about how you do things, that do they come back? Or do these stories of being nickel and dime saturate the public as a whole, which I think they're slowly starting to at this point.
Yeah.
There's usually about a year or two lag behind it starting and then catching up with the general public. And Wall Street Journal just had another thing about maintenance and nickel and diming and stuff like that. So you're going to see more and more of these articles come out as people try to snipe Iger as he kind of takes the reins again. So we'll definitely see on that regard. But here we are again. Phil, you said, I don't know if we're a little light in our show and we're just at an hour. So we definitely filled in, and I'm definitely not editing out my whole pre-trip report on that. You guys are going to have to thank you for suffering, I should say, because if you're listening to this, you probably didn't fast forward too much through my my trials and tribulations there. That being said, guys, thank you very much for listening. DVC engagement for next week, Phil. What did we pick?
So for next week, we have picked what are some ways you curb the cost of eating while at Walt Disney World, be it in the park or out.
So I think we were talking, I think I was talking on a forum about like how people pack a lunch and bring it into the parks to save on cost or snacks or all that type of stuff. And people say, oh, a lot of people don't do that. Maybe a lot of people do. I've never seen a survey in how many people save on food. So we constantly see people how to save at the parks. So we want to know what you guys think. How do you save on food when you're going there? And I know the number one answer is going grocery shopping the day you arrive, type of thing. So that's what we're gonna do for sure. Save on those breakfast costs at the very least. Anyway, that's for next week. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll do a show. Hopefully, I'm gonna be out Saturday night on a trip to see some family, so I'm gonna take one trip before I go on my big trip. But we should be recording Sunday night. And delivered for all you fine listeners out there. Please like and subscribe, tell a friend, and catch you next time. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care all.